Okay. Huh. Well, let's discuss and see. Maybe we can make changes to our course as well. It's fine. Yeah, it's I encourage. Normal. I guess I would have to say this up front. I mean, I encourage. Like I've always thought learning, and this is from past experience. I've always thought learning is supposed to be fun, right? And in fact, at some stage, if people will have time, especially once we discuss a project, you notice when we start the data collection phase, I will insist that we have some sort of, what are we going to call it? Is it some hackathon, whatever they call them? Maybe we'll come here on a Saturday, make sure that we all collect the data that we need, and then we proceed with the other phases. So it's meant to be fun. And one of the reasons I'm doing this is I'm thinking beyond this, right? It's not, for me, it's not, well, it's the teaching part. I guess we get paid for that. But it's, for me, there's more beyond this, right? And I'm trying to see if I can build relationships with the big honchos, you people, right? From the industry and whatnot, important people doing important things. But yeah, so we stopped off at slide number 5, but just to mention that, again, I mean, the only kind of thing is going to be part 4 when we start we'll just quickly look at Python. If you people want us to revisit Python next week, we can do that. Maybe we dedicate the last 30 minutes again if today's session is not going to be sufficient. So you let me know, right? But my assumption was that, I mean, if you can program in Perl, Java, PHP, you should be able to program in Python. I assure you, it's one of the simplest languages I've ever worked with. I first used Python in 2014, and I fell in love with Python. I've been using Python ever since, right? For my immediate scripting needs, you can do so much more, right? You can build web applications. I don't know if you can build mobile applications, but it's general purpose. I mean, most people use it for scientific computing. And you notice that most of the machine learning algorithms that we're going to be looking at are available in Python modules like scikit-learn, which happens to be one of the most popular machine learning libraries, right? But yeah, so we'll look at just administrative issues and then just a brief course introduction. And I thought that there's some things that I thought I'll touch on in part 3, just some general things that have maybe little or nothing to do with the course itself, but I thought this would be helpful to us as we embark on this journey, right? 2 years is a long time. Perhaps it's going to be longer for some of us, who knows? And then we'll start with Python, right? We already did the introductions and yada yada. So yeah, apparently, I was given this document, right? And apparently, the learning the goals of this course, right, at the end of this term, we should be able to, all of us, apparently, we should be able to identify the key processes of data mining and data warehousing and knowledge discovery processes, and be able to describe the basic principles and algorithms used in practical data mining. So the second point here, you notice will come up a lot as we discuss our, is it 4 or 5 core themes? So what I thought would be interesting in most of our lectures, especially as we're discussing these new themes, is we gloss over the basic principles, look at the various algorithms. Like for instance, when we discuss clustering, look at the various algorithms associated with clustering, and then read a few papers, whatnot. But bottom line here is that point number 2 is going to come out a lot as we start covering each of those individual 5 themes that we're going to look at, right? And then we should apparently be able to apply data mining, data mining techniques to solve problems in other disciplines in a mathematical way, right? This is strongly aligned with the mini project. And perhaps as we're discussing the 5 core themes, we'll probably look at simple examples to try and understand exactly what it is we'll be discussing, right? So some practical hands-on here. So it'll be the same thing. Each theme, we look at the theory, we read a few papers, we look at some practical examples, right? And because we're going to work on individual problems, it could be the case that you will be working on a problem that's aligned to clustering, for instance, maybe regression, I don't know, who knows, maybe classification. So as we're walking through the different themes, maybe we might be discussing something that you'll be working on for a mini project, maybe not. But bottom line is, at the end of it, or we want to be in a position where we're able to conduct a machine learning or a data mining centric research project, right? End to end. So from data collection all the way up to analysis, right? Evaluation. And then apply data mining methodologies with information systems and generate results that can immediately be used for decision making, right? Yeah. So apparently these are the learning outcomes. But I thought I would come up with my own learning outcomes because I'm not sure what your plans are with regards to your topic of interest when it comes to the research you're going to work on in year number 2, but I assume that some of us in here might end up working on a data mining kind of problem. I know there were, out of the 5 people that were examined last, is it the ones that were graduating this year, a few weeks ago, 2 or 3 of them worked on data mining projects or research topics. And then this year, there are 2 people that we've actually invited that are working on interesting data mining problems. I know Francis is trying to see if they can automatically detect armyworms, apparently, right? So it's going to be like image classification. And one of the reasons, I'll make mention of this later on, but one of the reasons I've decided to invite them to come and give these things we are calling academic talks is so they can tell us things like what tools are they using, because you realize that these people are using different tools. Not everyone is using Python, right? I know Francis is using TensorFlow, for instance. I know Lillian, she graduated. Francis is a current student, but Lillian used MATLAB, right? So we invite them here so that they maybe, as part of their talks, they tell us why they decided to use those tools and what sort of approaches they use, for instance, right? It might be beneficial for some of us, maybe not, right? So you notice that from this structure of the course itself, you notice that we'll be placing emphasis on things like practical knowledge, right? Experimentation. So how do you, if you were to undertake like a data mining project, research project, I mean, how do you go about conducting necessary experiments that you need to conduct, right? How do you come up with a proper experimental design? What sort of evaluation strategies do you have to use? And there are certain things that are not going to be discussed like during our normal lecture sessions, but will only come up once we read these papers, which is why we're reading these papers. So things like ethics and bias, right? I don't know if people have heard about what's happening in China. Apparently China has now started, I don't know if they've rolled out the system that they're using that is able to automatically detect people by just looking at how they walk or something. I don't know. Has anybody heard about that? You know, but there are ethical concerns here, right? I mean, you know, a while back I attended an event where someone was describing a paper where these people were trying to, they claim that they came up with, they conducted a study that was able to automatically detect, you look at somebody's face and you automatically detect if somebody's a potential criminal, right? Now it's used as a classic example of, I guess, things to do with bias when you're describing machine learning here, right? So I think it would be important for us to read more of these papers, and I assure you, reading these papers is actually going to be more beneficial than sitting here and coding, and well, coding is nice, and maybe preaching, right? Lecturing. Reading papers is a much more effective way of trying to get a sense of what this is all about, because you're exposed to what people are up to right now. And I assure you, people are doing exciting and interesting things, right? You notice that most of the projects that, sorry for this, but most of the projects that we tend to work on in places like Zambia are more applied data mining, right? We're not really working on groundbreaking ideas, but people are doing exciting things, and the only way we can get a sense of what sort of exciting things people are doing out there is if we read, right? Might not be useful in the Zambian context, but reading is good nonetheless. So again, so this is a half course, so meaning that the classes, well, we wrap up the class by 31st of May, unless if Senate decides to allocate additional time because of the confusion which was there. We lost about a week. I'm happy for us to have, if we realize to say we're going to run out of time, I'm happy for us to find time and make sure that we cover as much as we can, right? Right. And then so it would be, so the course I thought would be interesting if you ran it using, is not traditional lecture type session where I stand in front and I'm just walking through the slides and maybe, go through a few code examples. I don't think that would be strange for 3 hours, right? But still, it becomes boring. Now I've sat in certain postgraduate courses where someone is teaching for 3 hours, right? And it worked quite well, I suppose. But for this, I think it would be more interesting if we break it up. So our 3-hour-long session will be broken up into 3. I'm proposing we do it into 3. Now we'll do a trial next week. If we notice that certain things don't work out, we might shift things around. We might change things around. We can vote and decide as a group, right? It's a pity people are not here, but yeah. So all in all, what we'll have is for each of these sessions, weekly sessions, we'll have slotted into there. Supposed to, I was saying a seminar every fortnight here because I was thinking we'd have a seminar every after like 2 weeks or something. But I think it would be nice to do them every week. I think we've already had people confirm to come and give talks. So far, I think we have 1 industry talk confirmed. We have 3 academic talks. So I know Friday is keen to come and give a talk. He did a part of what he worked on was to do with automatic number plate recognition or something. You see, when you drive into UNZA, that big book they use, right? His argument was we can automate that process, right? So why can't we just put some camera somewhere there and automatically, get number plates and do fancy image recognition things there, and then, instead of writing in a book, you automate the whole process, right? So he's keen to come and give a talk on that. So there's Friday, there's Lydian, there's Francis, and there's someone from CIDAS. We've been in touch with these people since from last year. They are keen to work with us. They're trying to explore the possibility of us collaborating with them, and so they are willing to come and give an industry talk to come and tell us what sort of challenges they have when working with health data. And I will emphasize to them that they touch on issues to do with ethics, seeing as they deal with very sensitive data, right? I mean, they have details of HIV results. And now when I was at Coptic, they gave me this form to fill in, say, consent to get an HIV test and write your name, right? And I'm thinking, how is anonymity guaranteed here? Like how many people have access to that information? And nothing to do with data mining, but more to do with ethics, right? Yeah. So we'll also have paper reading sessions where I think what will be interesting is, again, we'll have a trial run. Next week, I'll suggest a paper, which we'll go and read, and then we'll discuss it together as a group. But I think what will be interesting is not just for Lighton to suggest a paper, but for everybody else to take turns to suggest a paper. So we'll come up with rules on how to select a paper. So for instance, things like it must not be older than 5 years, right? It must be on a topic that we have covered. So we will not be reading papers to do with clustering when we haven't yet discussed clustering. Right, I don't know where they think the classifiers came in here, but it's supposed to be, so each lecture session will be split into a lecture, traditional lecture, maybe a bit of practical session in there, a seminar, and a paper reading session. So 3 core things. Sometimes, depending on the person who is coming to give a talk, it might be that we'll start with the talk, maybe we'll end with the talk, or maybe we'll have the talk in between. All right, so Again, if you look at the 3 hours, this is what I'm proposing we do. So 30 minutes for the so-called seminar sessions, right? So probably have this invited guest give a talk for 20 minutes, and then we have 10 minutes for questions, right, where we ask questions. The paper discussion as well, maybe 30 minutes we have a discussion. Now you'll notice that there are certain papers that are really interesting, and it might actually be the case that to take more than 30 minutes. I was, the lab I was working in had this, so the department of computer science was clustered into what they called labs, right? So these labs were made up of faculty staff that had specific interests. So like for instance, the computer science department would have Mayumbu would have his own lab because maybe he's interested in distributed computing, for instance. Monica would have her own lab because she's interested in software engineering. And so usually those labs would have like weekly meetings, right? And as part of the activities, core activities, you have like paper reading sessions. But a lot of things would happen, you know, presentations and whatnot. And the reason you have those things is you notice that most of the things that you learn during this postgraduate journey of yours will be done through osmosis. Very few things will actually be done in class, right? I don't think Dr. Lampi or Monica will teach you how to automatically use, or how to use software to automatically cite and reference things, right? I don't think she'll do that, right? It's sad that maybe we don't have these regular meeting times where people meet, but most of these things are learned through osmosis, like for instance from the senior students. So the more you interact with someone like Francis, because he's a year ahead and he's been exposed to the things that you're doing right now, you pick up things, right? He'll introduce you to tools. He'll tell you to say, TensorFlow is better than MATLAB because of ABCD, right? So instead of you experimenting with various tools, you already know to say, you know what, I think I'll just dive in and start using TensorFlow. I'll dive in and I'll start using scikit-learn. All right, so paper reading sessions 30 minutes, and then lecture sessions roughly about 120 minutes or 2 hours, maybe less, right? And if you look at the last page of the thing that I dished out, you notice that we said that we had a total of about 10 sessions. Is it 10 lectures or 10 weeks or something? By our estimate, we think that spending 2 weeks on each of those core themes should be sufficient for us to achieve our objectives, I think. If we run out of time, like we have because we've lost time because of this go-slow thing, we'll do a makeup, I guess. All right, so like I said, the lecture sessions will just involve us going through just a basic theory surrounding the various algorithms that we'll be discussing. Like for instance, when we look at classification, apparently, right, I thought it was strange when I was going through, oh, it's not here. It's probably forward. When I was going through the, get there. When I was going through the specific things associated to the different themes that we're going to cover, they provided details on the specific algorithms that we're supposed to look at, right? We can maybe talk about all of them, maybe just cherry pick the ones that people claim are more superior, right? We'll get to decide anyway. But takeaway point here is that we'll have a basic introduction and then some practical walkthroughs, right? So paper reading sessions, I've already mentioned this here. Seminars, the academic talks, because I'm debating on whether we can invite, I know that Dr. Piri or Jackson has been working with a number of students that have been working on data mining problems, so maybe we can also invite him to come and give a talk that will be centered on just a general talk on some of the problems that he's worked on so far, maybe just a summary to give this idea. We might invite him, but so far, people that have confirmed participation as far as academic talks are concerned are past students and current students. And part of the reason we're doing this is so you guys can derive some inspiration from them. Who knows, right? All right, so apparently we're supposed to have a class on, sorry, this is a bit blurry because it was after the fact. So we're supposed to have a class on Tuesdays and Fridays. Hopefully the people from Parliament will, like they said, is it beginning April or something, maybe you'll start joining us, so we'll collapse this session into Tuesday. But for now, until it's collapsed into the Tuesday session, we'll have 2 parallel sessions. So the things we'll discuss on Tuesday will more or less be the same things we'll discuss on Fridays. And I think we are somewhat lucky here because we plan to start these talks after next week, which is April, right? The talk we're having next week is going to be a trial. I will be the guinea pig here. I'll just give a talk on what we did last year, something we did last year. I have the post outside. When going out, I can talk more about it. Yeah, but if you want, again, if you need clarification, if you need help with, especially the data collection part, once we start working on the mini project, we can always dedicate a weekend. I'm assuming people are going to be available on a weekend, maybe a Sunday for people that are Adventists or something. We were planning to use Moodle if it still remains problematic. Like right now, we're unable to enroll people because apparently the whole process, the enrollment process is automated. So if it proves to be a challenge, then we'll just dump it and we'll continue with the course mailing list and then just do things manually. It shouldn't be that hard to manage a class size of 9 individuals. Right? Moodle incidentally, Moodle becomes useful when you're handling large classes, for instance. Right? It's just a screen grab of our 5310 course here. And then occasionally, I mean, I've come up, there's a course web page. We abuse resources provided by UNZA, so some large files, we just dump them on that course web page. Usually I'll send you a link. Not that bundles are a problem for people that work, but I guess when you're on the UNZA network, you can download them at no cost at all. In fact, for people that, was there someone who works at Zcash or something, or someone who has access to ADROM, you notice that you can actually access this content free of charge as long as you're connected to ADROM, right? Parliament doesn't have ADROM access, no. ADROM, no. Okay, so in terms of, apparently these are some of the prescribed and recommended textbooks. Now I'm putting them here because they're part of the broad write-up of this description of the course itself. But really, at the end of each lecture series, there will be a list of references that I would have personally used so that you can later on reference. If you feel like buying this book or illegally downloading it, feel free. I've never used this book myself, neither have I used this as well. But the fact that they are prescribed and recommended should signal the fact that they are somewhat important, right? What I have done is I have used this book before, right? And in fact, if you're one of those people who eventually work on a machine learning problem and decide to use Worker, it's perfect, right? Because this is written by the people that are behind Worker, right? Worker is pretty interesting. Unlike Python, where you're writing code, you can actually, with no programming experience, you can already do interesting things. So as long as you know what sort of data format you should feed the application itself. And it does fancy things like if you have a whole host of features, for instance, it automatically rank your features for you, for instance, to specify which of the features are more important. I don't know, so. And then I had this slide because from past experience, right? But I realized later on, this is after the fact, to say it was stupid of me because I was dealing with people that technical experts, right? In the past, when we've had interactions with students, right? You find people come with Macs and Windows and Linux, and so troubleshooting becomes a problem. And so what has worked for us is making sure that when we are working through the practical problems, we have a consistent environment so that if there's a practical session and you have a problem, we know exactly how to troubleshoot or how to debug. I don't know how to debug on a Mac, for instance. I've not used Windows in a very long time. So this is why I put these things here. I have a virtual machine already created with Python 3, with Pandas already installed, with scikit-learn, and with MATLAB. So if you want, I mean, you can obviously set up this environment. If you want to troubleshoot and work through the problems and use Windows or Mac, that's fine. There's no problem. Right? I put this here. We're probably not going to use things like, we'll probably restrict ourselves to Python, but I put them here because I had it in my mind that maybe people like Francis would be keen to come and give some sort of tutorial. So come and show us exactly how to use TensorFlow if there are people that are keen, right? So maybe have a session on a Saturday and have him come through and show us, maybe just spend an hour or two, maybe three, show us how to use this. And if people want to use MATLAB, I've never used MATLAB before, we can maybe ask Lillian to say, can you come, right? I have no idea why Lillian used MATLAB, but I don't know. But she works for the, she came up with a model to predict rainfall in Zambia, right? It's a really interesting project. With her permission, I can ask her to share her corrected dissertation, and then I can circulate it so that people just browse through it so that you see. Really interesting study, but I thought what was unfortunate is, like if you look at the experimentation, right, she made a number of assumptions, things like making decisions on what algorithms to use upfront without justifying, right? And if you look at some of the results, for instance, she only restricted the results to the algorithms that she claims were superior, right? But in ideal case, what people do actually, if you notice as we are reading, what people do is you provide results for everything that you've considered, right? But so maybe if people are keen to experiment with MATLAB, I don't know, we can ask her to come. I'll be keen to, anyway, but the learning curve for Python is not as steep as things like MATLAB. I'm assuming MATLAB is hard here, which is why we're advocating for scikit-learn, right? So when it comes to all these fancy algorithms associated with classification, and I mean, we're starting at things that support vector machines, regression and clustering, we shall use religiously scikit-learn, right? And you notice, people, that again, I just wanted to emphasize up front here that please don't focus on the programming part. Is you already know how to do these things. What you want to do is understand the end-to-end process, what you must do if you do decide to undertake a data science or a data mining project, right? How do we evaluate, right? Forget about the programming, it's trivial. You'll notice, in fact, once we start looking at the mini projects, that it's easy stuff. Everything is done for you, right? It's all thanks to scikit-learn and Pandas and MATLAB and Python in general, anyway. All right, so Pandas is nothing more than just a data analysis tool. So it does, you know how when you're using Excel, you can do pivots and transpose things? Pandas is perfect for those things, right? And you notice once we start experimenting with some of these algorithms that the format of the data is supposed to be in a certain way, right? And so for you to convert the data in a form that the algorithm you'll be working with is going to be able to easily interpret, you must use libraries like Pandas. And by the way, Pandas is by no means the only library that you can use. You notice that there are a lot of them out there, actually. This is what makes Python, I guess, a really nice tool to work with. I don't know if Java or these other tools have comparable libraries that one can use, but I assure you, the support on places like Stack Overflow is, you'll find support everywhere, actually. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a Google Groups for Pandas, a Google Groups for scikit-learn, right? You find whatever question you have about scikit-learn, about Python, you will find online. Right? And then, so I included matplotlib here because you notice that next week when we start discussing the data processing part, we'll we'll probably discuss this thing that people call the EDM or exploratory, it's ED actually, not EDM. The exploratory data analysis phase, right? Where it's a fancy way of saying, you see, when you have a large data set and you don't understand what is going on under the hood, you want to have an idea. One of the things you do is you summarize them, you pivot data, you generate graphs, histograms, and all those fancy things. Matplotlib is perfect for that, right? It's marketed as being what? A library for producing publication quality graphs, right? So if you obsess a lot about how things look like, now please, you should look at my poster out there. My posters, I religiously use R for graphing, right? I could substitute R with MATLAB. One of the reasons I use R is because of the quality of the graphs, of the visualizations, the visuals that it's able to generate, right? Really nice things. Now we should be worrying about, obsessing about things like word hunger, not quality of graphs, right? I apologize, but I apologize. All right. I guess a part that maybe people might be interested in here, because apparently this is a core course, so the distribution is supposed to be like so. 10% will be allocated towards our paper reading sessions, right? So we will get the arithmetic mean for all the paper reading sessions. So if we have, let's say, a total of 10 paper reading sessions, each paper reading session will be, oh, hi, welcome, Master Ted. Each paper reading session will be worth 1%, right? I don't have to remind us that a percent is important, right? I guess sometimes it can make a difference between maybe passing or failing, actually. I haven't asked what the performance was like last week, but I've heard in the grapevine that apparently, allegedly, the previous person was a quote-unquote sadist. Apparently people failed or something. I don't know what happened here. No, it's a true story, apparently, allegedly. I don't know if it was this course, but I'm told it's this course, right? People do fail, actually, by the way. And it's sad because you shouldn't fail, because 60% of the marks are allocated towards a continuous assessment. And if you look at the continuous assessment, most of these are giveaway marks, maybe except for the 20% for the class theory test where you have to sit, right, and you're writing things. But we can make it an open book exam if you want, because it would be, I've always thought that assessing people at this stage is, we're not trying to figure out if you know the facts here, right? Trying to see if you understand, if you can think at a much higher level, right? So it's different. And in all the exams that I did at postgraduate, by the way, it's sad that the UNZA doesn't have this policy. All of them were take-home exams, right? So you write the exam, you go home, you have 24 hours to write the exam. The first time I wrote a take-home exam, I regretted because I thought I had enough time. I stayed up the whole night. I assure you, I stayed up the whole night, and it was horrible. I actually ended up thinking a theory exam was better than a take-home exam. But the thing is, takeaway point here is these are things, if you just put in the work that is required, you can get good grades from this course, right? People are available to help. I will always be here to help if you have challenges. I mean, these paper reading sessions, coming up with summaries for paper reading sessions shouldn't be that hard. Contributing when we have seminars shouldn't be that hard. You giving a talk in front here like I'm doing here, I should have stood there, shouldn't be that hard. I think we do this at work, hopefully. I think so, right? So these are things that we do, right? And which is why I was, now one of my, sorry, I'll pause for a little while. One of my supervisors, the people I worked with, he had this theory that, you know, the seating arrangement when you have certain activities, academic activities, has an impact on the experience and on the efficacy of whatever is happening, right? So if we had a setup like we do in the CS thing there, where someone is standing in front and there's rows, right? Perhaps it's different from this. And in fact, this shouldn't be the case. It would be nice if there was someone here and like we are colleagues, right? But the bottom line is these are easy marks in my opinion, right? So 10 for paper reading sessions, 5 for paper presentations, 5 for class participation, 20 for the practical project. It's going to be 1, right? Mini project. And we will have, what? Is it almost 6 weeks to work on this? Beginning Friday next week. So the open date, I'll talk more about this. The open date is Friday next week. So we have 6 weeks to work on the project. It's doable, right? It's going to be hard if you wait until maybe 2 days before. Now, procrastination is bad. 2 days, you think it's an easy project. I assure you, it might, the implementation part might be trivial, right? Because you do it once we've had, by the time you are finishing off the implementation, we'll have exhausted our discussion of the 5 core themes, right? So we'll be in a position to work on the problem. But the thing is, things like, because it's broken down into the implementation, there'll be a presentation, so you need to prepare slides like I have here, where people will ask you questions, you write a technical report, right? All that takes time, right? Because you just don't wake up and write a technical report. There's a lot of thought that goes into that, right? And it has to conform to the format of your typical academic piece of writing, right? So obviously you have a title, an abstract, an introduction, things like related work and references, properly formatted references, right? And properly styled citations as well, right? So there are marks allocated to all those things. And so you want to make sure that from the get-go, just start working on it. Do not be deceived by thinking, I've made such mistakes in the past myself, thinking that you can wing it, right? I can do this in 1 day. No. No, some people are smart like that. And then apparently we're supposed to have 1 test, right? If you want 2 tests or 3 tests, it's fine. The 5310 course that I'm teaching this year, I taught it last year. We asked people if they wanted another test. We had, is it 3 instead of 2? Because of the performance, obviously. If we're getting the weighted mean, right, of the assessments, the more tests we write, if one is harder, then we're spreading out the damage, right? So if you want more tests, we can always have more tests. Marking is not that hard for a small group, I think, in my opinion. And then there's the final exam where you sit for 3 hours, unfortunately. For 3 hours. So all in all, right, this is what we expect, right? And I wanted to just, again, emphasize this, right? That the CA, you can pass this course in theory before you get into the exam. Because the pass mark is what? The threshold is what? 50, right? So if the CA is out of 60, you can get the 50 before you get into the exam. Or better yet, get a lot of marks such that you're only fighting for a small fraction in the exam. But please let us take note of the fact that apparently according to UNZA regulation, you can only pass only if you pass both the continuous assessment and the final exam, right? So even if you got 6 out of 60 in the CA, but if you fail the exam, right, then you fail the course apparently.
What's failing the final exam?
Failing the final exam would be, so failing the final exam would be, the exam is out of 40. If the mark you get over 40 times 100 is less than 50, then you would have failed. So, which is sad really. But I don't think it's that hard to. The thing here is you must, maybe we can come up with a formula here. You must get at least half. Whether you like it or not, you must get at least half in the final exam. Then you're home and dry. Right? The exam, I don't know if the department has its own specific policy, but what we do, what we do in our 5310 exam, at least what we did last year, was we made sure that there was a question on each and every core topic or core theme. Usually there are compulsory questions and no. I don't know if policy is different. You probably have like something like 5 questions and then say answer 3. You have 1 hour to answer each one of the 3. Maybe 6 and then answer 3. And maybe each of those questions is based on one of those core 5 themes, right? Maybe some of them will have a mixture of those different aspects. Let me just quickly think so that we get to the Python thing, I guess. So on paper reading sessions, right, I thought I would talk about things that might be helpful, right? You know, as you start reading, so when you're reading a paper, obviously, one of the things you do is you're taking notes, right? And I think it's a common practice when people are reading something where you take notes, maybe you print it out and you take notes. Just wanted to point out, if people haven't used these tools before, there are what they call bibliographic managers out there. So tools that make it a lot easier for you to do these things. So, for instance, if I hope I have Mendeley installed. Let me just show you. With a tool like Mendeley, now I'm a Mendeley advisor, as they call them. So it's not installed. So I get extra space, cloud space for advocating for Mendeley and all that, marketing on their behalf. Things we obsess about, right? But so tools like Mendeley will make life a lot easier because, so like my Mendeley, for instance, has everything that I have been reading since 2011, right? Properly annotated as well. And the annotation thing is what I wanted to touch on. So instead of you printing out a 10-page research paper and then you're scribbling, say, oh, this is what they did, you're taking note important things, you can actually annotate within Mendeley and then you sync the annotations to the cloud. So when you're using a different computer at home and at work, you just sync the things and you have access to those things. And that becomes extremely useful, not for our paper reading sessions, but when you get to the second phase of what you're going to be doing. When you start, you see, when you start writing things like the related work section, for instance, you read a lot of things, right? You want to keep track of what you're reading and the main points for when you start writing the related work or the literature review chapter, right? And that's when the annotations become useful, right? You can highlight, you can do a lot of cool things. I highly encourage you to poke around Mendeley, really nice tool. I actually regret not having installed it, I guess.
Is there a version for the mobile platform?
Yes, there is. There's an Android version. Yeah. There's an Android version or platform. We have time, I guess we can. I'll just quickly. I'm surprised I didn't install Mendeley here. I should have set it in mind.
How bad is the one
for which one? Automatically reciting things. I've never used. Hey, sorry. This thing was not meant to be the normal lecture. It was. Now I must say something. I'm proud to say I don't use Microsoft Word, right? I typeset my documents, right? And I wish I could show you the beauty of typesetting, and I should show you this. If you're going to end up working with someone like Mayumbu, he will insist actually you will not write your dissertation using Microsoft Word. You use LaTeX. You typeset it, right? You use markup. It's has anyone used LaTeX before?
LaTeX?
LaTeX.
No.
LaTeX.
How do you spell it?
It sounds like LaTeX, but it's LaTeX. Uppercase L, yeah, LaTeX. LaTeX. LaTeX or LaTeX. It's a typesetting. Now I must show you. Let me show you some. Maybe I can show you right now. Maybe we can look at.
So what's the problem with Microsoft Word? Is it the right issues or?
The issue. Number one, the way the document looks afterwards. So things like consistency, right? Graphs. Now, the first 2 posters I have here, they were done in LaTeX. You notice that the font on the graphs, right? I'm sorry that we obsess about these things. The fonts on the graphs, the axes, labels, and whatnot, they're the same as the text, right? There's font consistency. In my documents, the documents that I typeset, the only thing that has a different font is a screenshot, because I don't have control over that. But the key thing for LaTeX is it helps you become more productive because you don't have to worry about how a document looks like. You focus on the content, not the look and feel of the document. It's so easy to use. I assure you, let me show. Yes, it's markup. It's just like Markdown or HTML actually. Yeah. And let me show you how, an example of how a nice document, and I do hope, I guess this is here. Now, I hope I have camera ready, and I don't know if people will be able to see the difference between, will be able to see the, by the way, hey, I'm always happy to, some of these things that I'm throwing at you, if you want us to, if you don't feel like, and I don't blame you, you shouldn't actually. If you don't feel like reading up these funny tutorials about how to use Mendeley, and you have time on one of these days, and I have time as well, we can always meet as a group. If you want to learn how to use LaTeX, I can introduce you to LaTeX. The more people we have using LaTeX, the better, right? Now, I don't know if this was done using, what's this? This is horrible. This is horrible. This is 400. Okay, this is one, I'm zooming it at 400, and then I will, hopefully this will work. And hopefully someone will notice the difference immediately, because the difference here is, if you look at this, this is done using a word processor, right? Similar to LibreOffice, obviously. But this, hopefully I think, this is typeset using LaTeX, right? This is markup. So, if you look at issue number 1, right? This is zoomed at 400%. If I zoom this at, maybe this might not work, maybe not. If I zoom this at, maybe it might not work because the things I did, this is a bad example. Because I generated the images using R, but I was going to show you to say, but anyway, maybe you can't you see the, zoom that, let's look at one section here. Let's say, zoomed at 150, introduction. LaTeX, zoomed at 150. Now, maybe people are not seeing this, but, but please tell me can't you see that this is almost pixelated actually? If you actually squint a lot, you can see the pixels themselves. At least I can see them. But because my LaTeX is of high quality, oh my God. Anyway, but anyway, these are things to kind of consider. Actually, these are nice tools to use. There's a reason why people, especially in technical fields, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people in physics actually use these things. Physics, maths especially. It's especially good for people that are going to be working on problems that will require coming up with mathematical formulas, for instance. Perfect for that, right? Perfect. Hi.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I just want to find out what time does your session end?
Oh, this is, we are still here until 2030, maybe 21. Why?
All right.
If you wanted to come and join us, you're welcome to come and join us. Sorry? Okay, great. So, by the way, as we are discussing this, I'll be mentioning some things, some random things. Some will be useless, absolutely nothing to do with 5740. I usually veer off. Some you will find useful, some you will not find useful, right? Worker you might not find useful. LaTeX you might not find useful. Mendeley you will find useful, I promise you. Because one of the things it does is, the thing you brought up, right? The word thing. Now I've never used word referencing using Microsoft Word, for instance, but if you write something today, okay, one of the technical report or the paper summary, if we say use SCM referencing, for instance, how easy is it for you to use the whatever Word plugin you use, right? I bet it's not easy, right? If we suddenly change, say no, we want to use APA now, or we use Harvard because UNZA, Harvard referencing because the UNZA postgraduate regulations say we must use Harvard referencing, right? You start struggling. But so when you use something like Zotero or Mendeley, all that is inbuilt, right? You just click of a button, boom. If you're typesetting, you export your bibliography as a bib file, and then you just import it in LaTeX. As easy as that. Cuts across. So the beauty is when you're using something like Mendeley, you can integrate it with a word processor because it comes with a plugin. I shall install it and show you next session. We should be having these 5-minute breaks, right? I think. I don't know if they offer free coffee at the department, or snacks. We should advocate for snacks where we talk about some of these things. But I will show you next session how nice this is. It makes life so much easy, I assure you.
I think in the Office 2016, they've really tried to improve on the referencing.
Okay. Let's go for Office then. LaTeX, I assure you, the moment you use it, you get hooked, right? And it's so easy to use. It's so easy to use, right? Let me show you I guess I should also just show you the project, the quality of my dissertation, right? The quality, the look and feel, how it looks like, graphs and all that. Now, I can, if you look at the things that my goodness, if you look at the consistency you will not find a single styling mistake here. I mean, things like indexing your document because it's 200 pages, hello, it must be indexed, right? Indexing and referencing consistent, right? Down to the dot, right? Things like if I'm specifying a DOI, it doesn't give you that whole URL, including the doi.org, it just gives you the key here, right? These things. But I digress anyway. We can proceed here and all right, so something to think about here. You'll find these things useful. I encourage you to do that, especially the annotations. In fact, when you annotate your document with something like Mendeley, you just come here when we're having a discussion and you are referencing your annotations instead of printing it out. Now, are you going to honestly print, if we have 10 paper reading sessions, you go and print out 10 pages, you scribble, you come here, you print next time, come on. We must save the trees, right? Sorry? Yeah, let's save the trees. All right, so more on paper reading sessions. Obviously, as part of the summaries, right? Again, we'll have a trial next week where we'll explain expectations. But so one of the things you want to do as part of your paper summary is you try and highlight people that have done something similar, right? And obviously, we know where to go, right? There are places, academic databases, field-specific databases like SCM for computing, obviously. But the number one go-to place, obviously, is, we know this, right? Google Scholar, right? So you go there, and then usually you can, there are different ways of starting out. You can start by maybe looking up the title that we'll be discussing, right? So you dump it in, you've used Google Scholar before, right?
No.
Okay, we can have a discussion about it. Incidentally, one of the projects that we're thinking, one of the projects would actually involve mining information from Google Scholar, right? What Google Scholar does is it actually indexes academic literature, right? The cool thing about Google Scholar is it doesn't restrict to peer-reviewed publications, but it also indexes what they call gray literature, for instance. So if I was to, I will bet you my my academic profile is probably, hey, by the way, in Google Scholar you can see the performance of the ranking of people at UNZA, right? Yes, yeah, now this is nice. We must do a ranking of people in CS here. If you go to somebody from UNZA, and then you see that Professor Sapel is the most cited person at UNZA, followed by this Professor Isaac Piri. You can actually get a sense of how productive people are by way of publishing anyway in the CS department if you want to, right? So someone like this is public information. We're not writing here, so you can easily go and check anyway. So we can see that Dr. Piri is a somewhat accomplished person here because he has what, 114 citations, right? He's pretty decent. I'll compare him with someone who is lowly cited like Lighton here, which is not much here, 31 here. But the bottom line is you can do a lot of interesting things here. And I have a story to tell about, I don't know if people heard that there was is it a ghost law last year or something, lecturers? Ghost law at UNZA to do with promotions. What the UNZA has done now is they've introduced a new promotion criteria, right? So previously it used to be like they would just look at you as an academic. If you work at UNZA, they'll look at how many articles have you published, right? But what they're doing now is they're saying we're not just interested in seeing the quantity, right? Because we can say we make samosas, make millions of samosas, but how good are they, right? So what they're doing now is they're trying to incorporate, they've introduced quality as well. And the best way to measure the quality is by looking at this thing they call the H-index, right? So they've come up with thresholds. So for instance, for someone to be promoted, I'm at entry-level lecturer 3. For me to be promoted from lecturer 3 to lecturer 2, I must have at least an H-index of 1. For me to move from lecturer 2 to lecturer 1, I must have an H-index of, I think 2. For me to move from lecturer 1 to senior lecturer, I must have an H-index of, at least 4 or 6 or something. Very serious thing because it's not easy, right? To get to it's not easy to have this number go up. So it's a simple formula that looks at the H-index simply tells you an H-index of 6 means that out of everything that Jackson has published, he has at least 6 publications that have at least 6 citations. So it's telling you to say relative to how much is published, what is the quality, right? And the quality, the metric that is used to assess quality here is what? Citations, right? And we know if people are citing you, then there must be something good about what you've done, right? Well, sometimes, scratch that, sometimes there are people, and this is the beauty with environments like UNZA, there are people that work very esoteric areas, right? Like they're working on what they curiosity-driven research, like you're studying if Mars is going to shift whatever, right? Maybe people are not interested in those things, so they won't cite you. So, and perhaps you only have a handful of people that will read your work, right? So, which is why, but for fun, you must go to the UNZA thing and then just look at these people anyway. But bottom line here is you can go to a place like Google Scholar, right, which is a perfect entry point, and then you issue your search like you would in Google, right, or Bing. So if we're discussing a paper to do with like if we were discussing okay, that other paper, the paper that I said we should maybe look at was I think how to read a research paper. So what you do is you go in your search query and you'd say how to, there we go, how to read a paper, for instance, right? So you want to do this because, I don't know if we still have internet access here, but you want to do this because as part of your summary, you want to provide us with some insight into who else has done that, right? And I don't know if this paper is here or something, but assuming this was the paper, for instance, and there are a few other people that have cited it. So what you do is maybe look at 2 or 3 other papers and tell us what they're saying in relation to this paper, right? Also, as part of the summary, you tell us what you could have done better had you been the one who was conducting the study, right? What flaws exist, what potential gaps exist, and in fact, when you start going in CSC 6000, when you start teaching us about literature review, you realize that you do this literature synthesis to try and identify gaps, right? When you're trying to narrow down on specifics on what sort of problem you're going to solve, right? So yeah, enough about that in paper reading sessions. All right. So, but bear in mind that Google Scholar is not the only place. Well, Google Scholar is the, I guess it has everything, right? That's a beauty. It indexes it indexes everything, including great literature. But there are certain instances when you want to kind of access access more focused publication venues or academic databases. A- is perfect, it's specific for computer science. So you notice that here, for instance, it has a feature that allows you to narrow down to, a ranking of the various conferences to do with databases and data mining, right? Because there's so many publication venues out there, right? Literally, I mean, conferences are held throughout the year, right? Everywhere. So if you want to identify where good papers are published, you can go to somewhere like A-Mine and then narrow down and then try and see if you can access proceedings from these particular publications, okay, right? But you notice that whatever you find in a publication like SEMKDD, for instance, you will find in Google. So it's indexed in Google Scholar, so not Google. Right? And the beauty with Google Scholar, obviously, like I said, is you have these metrics that you can reference, like so citations. And then you can actually, it has certain interesting features where you can narrow down specifics, like specify the years that you want to search through and exclude patents and just stick with peer-reviewed publications, I guess. All right, but there's more. So there's other people that have come up with their own separate lists. Like this is really interesting. I usually refer to this. So what Jeff Huang has done is he's come up, he regularly updates his list. He's come up with a list of premier venues, right? Top tier conference venues by type, right? So those to do with AI, for instance, those to do with databases, those to do with human-computer interaction, those to do with, I don't know what other fields are there these days, but take your pick. So you can narrow down to specifics. Like I know KDD obviously is one of the premier venues for data mining, I guess. CGIR for information retrieval, so you normally find interesting papers there to do with data mining as well. But specific to search, anyway. And just to mention that again, it's always nice to, when we have these paper reading sessions, you refer to what we are doing in Zambia, right? We have, I was happy when I discovered that we have our own journal, which is, I guess it's cooperated by what? It's operated by the 3 major universities, so Mungushi University, Commonwealth University, and UNZA. So there are, I think, is it 4 issues in every year or something? I'm not sure. You want to look out for the most recent issue for this year to look at what was done. So it's always nice to look at what people are doing in relation to data mining, you know, what people have done in the past, right? And of course, the UNZA institutional repository, right? You gain access to the dissertations that people have written in the past to do with that. All right, so again, I mean, the reading, I don't know how many people went through these 2 papers, very easy to read, actually. Hope you didn't spend that much time here. But I just wanted to point out that most of the technical papers we're going to be looking at are probably going to conform to this structure, right? So you have your title, your abstract, your introduction. Always there's like literature review related work or background. It takes different names, but it's one and the same thing, right? Optionally, maybe they'll implement some system. They most definitely would have to conduct an evaluation, right? So usually, I mean, these data mining problems, people tend to do their tests using some prototype that they would have implemented, right? So the prototype would be explained in your implementation, for instance. Or maybe it would be design and implementation, or just design, right? It takes different forms anyway. This is optional, or it might be optional. So evaluation, discussion, maybe evaluation and discussion will be one and the same, and then conclusion and references, right? So a cheap trick is, what I found effective myself is the paper by Keshav, which explains what he calls the 3-pass approach, right? When I first started reading academic literature, I would spend a lot of time trying to understand the paper, because it's usually the case. In fact, when you first start out, right, if you're not an expert in the field, you might not know the background information, right? And I remember when I first started reading these, right, my supervisor actually laughed at me. The first couple of papers I was discussing with my supervisor, because as part of the scoping phase to try and narrow down what I would work on for my master's, we would have regular meetings where we would discuss papers, right? So go and read, we discuss, right? And I remember the first time I read is, I literally read all the references in the paper I was discussing, right? But that's not how you do it anyway. So the 3-pass approach is kind of helpful. So first pass is, you just look at the title, right? Quickly read through the abstract, because the abstract is going to provide you a summary of what the paper is about. And then you go through the introduction, because you want to understand what problem was being tackled. And then you quickly glance through the sections and the subsections, right? Just read through the sections and subsections. Now, this might not work for you, but I'm just saying this is something that really helped me. Once you're done with the first pass, this is just like you're done within maybe 5-10 minutes, right? Once you're done with the first pass, you already know what type of, obviously we're looking at computer science papers, right? Which field of computer science does it fall under? Is it human-computer interaction? Is it a theory-based paper, right? Is it an implementation paper, right? Is it an evaluation paper, for instance, right? This will tell you that. More importantly, you will know exactly what the main contribution of the paper is. Usually this is explicitly stated in the introduction. But anyway, the second pass is, after you quickly go through it, second pass is you start looking at, usually for computer science papers, you almost always have graphs, right? People like graphs, right? Show that they actually did work. So you want to look at the graphs to try and get a better sense of what was actually done and what the results were, try and verify whether or not they were correct, or if there are things that are somewhat iffy, right? And the outcome obviously is, by this stage, probably spend maybe some 30 minutes, maybe an hour or something, you'll have a firm understanding of what the paper is about, right? And then if you still don't understand the paper, you go through the final phase here, just to fully understand the paper. So it's, you notice, we will not look at complex papers. It will be mostly, especially the first couple of papers, just basic things, right? I thought it would be nice to start with, I know someone who was in the same lab as me. He was looking at, it was an interesting study, I guess, because I have an interest in education myself, in education data mining specifically. But he was looking at how best to identify at-risk students in Kenya, right? So apparently Kenya has really high failure rates, right? So the fundamental question he was asking is, what can we do to identify who can potentially fail, so that we apply corrective measures before they fail, right? So you predict if they're going to fail or not. It's a simple classification problem, ultimately, anyway. So I thought it would be nice to read up on one of the papers that he published. It would be good. At least it's something that we can easily understand, anyway. All right. And then with regards to the mini, I thought I would say a thing or two about this thing we're calling the mini project here. The descriptions will be ready on the open day of the project itself, which is Friday next week. So your initial task would be to select which problem you want to focus on. But what I thought would be fair and nice is if we So for if there are 9 of us, for instance, I don't know if it's 9. It is 9. No? Don't know. Maybe we can confirm. I was wanting to confirm. But if, let's say we had 9, we can have 3 questions based on 1 data set. So that initially maybe we work in groups to collect the data, right? But then it's every man for himself, right? Every man and woman for himself. I think that's a fair way of doing it, right? So you have the option to choose the questions that you're going to work on, essentially. But simple problems, nothing too complex. I think what's going to be more interesting though is the split itself, right? So what we're saying is, what we expect is ultimately at the end of it, obviously you will show us the code that you would have written to solve the problem, well organized, obviously. You shall write a technical report, and then we shall have presentations, and you talk like Mayumba and Lighton do, right? But we talk at work as well. I don't know how often do we present at ZRA? Is it? They're usually briefings, right? I don't know. Usually IT, I found when I was working for Airtel, in IT we were like machines. There was nothing like, but our friends in sales, right, and marketing, you know. But my life was a sad one at some stage. Not sad anyway, but I used to tell people, say, I used to extract data for a living once upon a time, right? And sometimes I would be called, no, come and give a presentation on, hey, you see, these people want me to go and give a simple presentation on what this data is and whatnot, with sales, because our unit was an interface between IT and departments like sales and marketing. So strangely enough, I would work with people that would think you were a god because you could pivot data in Excel, right? Now I wonder if they knew how to use Pandas, what they'd think. But anyway, so the mini project is worth 20 scores here, but the implementation is going to be 8%, so 8 marks. The technical report is going to be 8 marks. The presentation is going to be 4 marks. Again, the write-up on Friday will have specifics on how these marks will be distributed. It will be a very fair and transparent process, in my opinion. I just thought I would mention something about academic dishonesty. It's a very serious thing. I'll start with a story, right? Last year we were sitting in a meeting where we were discussing issues to do with our postgraduate students, and it turns out one of our students self-plagiarized, right? So they were pressed with time, right? They were working on the research project. They were pressed with time. Probably they were procrastinating, and then they realized maybe there was an upcoming promotion here. But what they did was they figured they had worked on a really nice 4th-year project, right? Capstone project. And they thought they could get away with this. So what they did was they went and copied what they did at 4th year undergrad and converted it into a master's. And it almost went through, right? Because it turns out that they found themselves working with a different person. But the stars aligned here, or the gods thought, say, no. They are allocated as internal examiner the person who was supervised at 4th year. The person immediately was like, but this is what we did at 4th year, right? You know, now they were lucky because I think they probably got off with a warning. I just wanted to mention that academic dishonesty is a very serious thing. It's so serious that if someone like Lighton is caught cheating, it happens actually, by the way. If someone like Lighton is caught cheating because he wants his H-index and citations or the number of publications to go high, he decides to plagiarize and do shady things. It's instant dismissal at UNZA. Right? That's how serious it is. There's nothing like a warning, right? So you want to make sure that you avoid it. And this is really, at this stage, I assure you, this is going to be an interesting journey. You don't have to go down this road. You don't have to. But sometimes when you procrastinate a lot, especially, you're forced to do this. But I just wanted to mention that the policy when it comes to academic dishonesty for the courses, you get a 0 anyway. All right. This is obvious stuff here. I mean, where to find me? We work from opposite here, 515. That's my email address. I take calls sometimes, but the problem is now at some stage before I joined this place, right? I never would have known the value of having a secretary, right? You see, I always give people an example of one of our first year class has the largest class I had last year had 99 students, right? If something goes wrong, and I tell people you can call, I can't, I'll be overwhelmed, right? Email is a lot easier because when I act on something, I can archive it. And in fact, following up, usually when someone calls and I answer and they need me to take certain action, I'll probably need to write it down so that I don't forget. But with email, I know that I archive my mails when I act on it. So I prefer email, but you have my number, I've shared it. If you don't, I can share it again. You're always welcome to call. We are colleagues. I think it's a small class, but I prefer email. And let's make maximum use of the mailing list as well, right? Very useful thing. Yeah. Very useful thing here. I'm sorry, but WhatsApp again. This funny group, right? UNZA, I don't know what they call it. There are 200 plus people there. My God. You see, I can't keep up if I don't check. In fact, I've muted this thing, right? Because like right now, I've muted it. I don't even want to look at it because it's, the problem I have with it is people share memes and, you know, it's hard to keep track of what's going on. And in fact, I was thinking when we were thinking about the projects, I was thinking, maybe can't we have people come up with some tool that will be able to predict if a WhatsApp post in some large group is useful or not or something, right? That would be nice, right? Like I have to literally scroll through. Now our WhatsApp group, our MSc WhatsApp group is fine because it's a small group, right? But the issue I have is if it's a conversation that involves a lot of people, then I would have to literally scroll up and follow through with the thread, right? So, but this is perfect because it's a forum, it's like email, right? Also has a web interface, but we can forward place and use WhatsApp if you want us to use WhatsApp. Is there, gentlemen, is there any questions so far? Please feel free to interrupt me. Oh, hi. Yes, these I'll share. I share them through here, sorry. So, you know, I've been sick these last few, no, it's like feature extraction here. I've been sick these last few, and this will come up when we start research methods with Monica, right? I've been sick these last few, I wake up sick these last 4 months, right? Went to the hospital, did blood tests, nothing. But you know how you become so engrossed and worried and you start thinking, is it the food? Is it maybe the house, you know? Like I can't figure out. So at some stage I actually stopped eating the food I was eating and started eating something else. It turns out it's not the food, right? But it's like the features now. Trying to identify which feature is more important, I guess. But
you are not resting enough.
Yeah, maybe. You think so?
Yeah.
No. You guys look tired. You look, sorry? You guys are ones that are not resting. And sadly for you, this next, and I'm sorry I have to say this, but this next couple of months, especially next year, you know, and I'm not trying to exaggerate this, but it's, especially that last phase, it's not an easy thing. It can be stressful, it can be, I have a friend who I studied my master's with. He was only submitting his dissertation a few weeks ago. Now, we started together in 2011. No, it's fine, right? Because something else came up along the way. More money, right? Which is fine. There are more important things out there, right? But what I'm saying is if you in fact, you want to develop a system, and if you're lucky, if you have a spouse at home, a partner, or someone who can encourage you to do what needs to be done, then you must, right? Make sure that your alarm clock can wake you up, say, remind you, have you done this, right? Because your supervisor will not force you to do, especially that last leg, right? That's the difficult part. In fact, most people fall off. It's so bad that, it's not just here actually, also, it's so bad that here, what they're planning to do in our department is to say, we should just give people the postgraduate diploma instead of just them just going away, right? But it's doable. It's doable if you just get it right, and it can be done. You know, sadly, your supervisor is not going to push you, actually. Some will, but they won't, right? If you don't show up and, like Dr. Piri was telling me, there are people, they're not showing up, what can I do, right? I mean, if it was, so I will share them, I'll put them here, they're here. And this link is in the document I shared. So but I'll also send this link via the mailing list as well. I'll share the slides, don't worry. Yeah, it's not like work where you go and, you know, you're programming and you write scripts. Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
This is more like a bigger picture of the whole program.
Okay.
So I know this time we're doing 4 courses. So when are we supposed to write the final exam?
So, like for, you write at the, like for this one, UNZA is insane now, they've changed, right? Terms, now they've related back, they're still calling them terms, but it's semesters, right? 2 terms. The exam for this is going to be written towards the end of the term. June. Yeah.
So again, after we finish, we'll start a new set of courses.
Yes.
The last final.
Yes.
Which we'll probably write in October.
Yes.
And then the following year, the one you're saying is going to be that 2022.
There's no, the exam there is the manuscript that you, that 120 page manuscript that you write, right?
So next year it will be
It's purely research. Yeah.
the whole year or?
Actually, it's open-ended. Some people do it 2 years, 3 years, but it's no, but that's true though. I know it sounds funny, but that is true. But I'll tell you this: this thing is, and I guess you are lucky, right? Because unless if there are a lot of temptations here, you pick up a job and. But if you, now I'm saying you're lucky, I'm trying to have a hidden agenda to ensure that you remain working with us here. But seriously, it's not an easy thing. Like it took me 2 years and 61 days. I was literally counting days, right? And the sad thing is, because similar to the mini projects, right? You're not going to be working on the same problems, right? Perhaps your colleague is working on a problem that he already understands, and so he's going to take slightly less time, right? You find, what's so depressing is you find your friend is graduating and you haven't even started writing, right? But, which is why I guess it might help as well to form these clusters of groups and maybe regularly meet, right? It's always nice, you know. We used to have a lot of those, the shut up and write sessions where we meet as a group, let's say, we're going to write today. It's a shut up and write session on Friday. We are writing today. I don't care what you're writing, but I know you're going to come in here and we'll be writing, right? You know, but it's that last part, the coursework part is easy, I assure you. This is easy stuff, right? It's easy stuff, but the part that's coming next year is usually the most difficult part. I'm co-supervising 2 other students, and I can already see there are challenges because I mean, you have to think on your own and, you know, take initiative, and there are temptations to procrastinate, right? You're sitting there, you're thinking, nah, I can do this tomorrow, next week, right? I have a friend of mine, he's in year number 3, he's in School of Engineering, right? And, and so I've told him, I can help you, you know, get you back on the straight and narrow path here, right? He keeps telling me, no, I'll come next week. Oh no, I have a trip, flying to Johannesburg, right? Those are nice. But you have to because it's work, right?
Yeah.
It's, although there's money, but it's work. I mean, you can't say no, right? Oh, I have to fly to Ndola because there's work that needs to be done, right? Time is ticking. Time is ticking. His goal was to finish and graduate this year. That was last year when we started talking. I don't think it's happening, right? But usually, like with most things in life, if you just come up with a routine that works for you, stick to it, right? For instance, if you realize you find a gap to say maybe Fridays are good for me, Fridays and Thursdays are good for me to remain focused and work on this, do that. If you're distracted at home and you realize, say, oh, there's a nice cafe where I can write from and focus, or maybe I can come at UNZA and work from the library, do that, right? Whatever works for you. I don't know if there are any other questions, maybe.
So you said it would be good if in the next semester,
Yes.
if we started to work on something tentatively that way.
That would be perfect, because I'll give you examples of two people that I'm co-supervising, right? They are still trying to come up with a topic right now, right? No topic yet.
No topic yet.
Yeah, they finished the coursework last year, right? But they're still struggling to find a topic. Now, if they had started this process early enough, and it's easy for people that are working, right? I mean, it's easy, it depends. All you have to do is decide. I mean, are you a distributed systems type person? No, I'm not, I don't do research in that. Are you looking at working towards a data-driven kind of problem? Are you a human-computer interaction type person and you want to go and develop some novel tool and evaluate it, right? You just have to, and problems, I'm sure problems are there. ZRA, Parliament, I mean, problems are there, right? You just need to, the trick here is, as you are going through CSC 6000, figuring out how to carve out or how to formulate a problem, deciding on what topic, number one, making sure that what you're going to decide, obviously, coincides with the expertise in the department. Otherwise, you'll be forced to say, change the topic because there's no one to supervise you, right? That's how it works. I mean, I couldn't possibly supervise a problem that's more aligned with theoretical computing because, number one, I'm not interested in that. I've never really invested time in that. I've never been a networking person. So anything to do with networking, I would never supervise or be able to co-supervise that, right? So you want to make sure that you get that right. But there's expertise now at UNZA. At least we have a lot of people. In fact, even people from outside, like if it's networking, Zambian people are here, right? All right. If there are no questions, I thought maybe we would, I don't know if you'd want us to contextualize, we can, right? Contextualize this issue of data mining, I guess, and then just gloss over the themes, and then I was so hoping we can just quickly it would be nice if we can touch on Python. If not, we can do it Tuesday and Friday. Sorry? Yeah, if not, Tuesday or Friday. Yeah, now, I'll have to, guys, I would have to confess up front here, there's a shameless plug, or there's shameless plugs in here. I've shoved in some things that I obsess a lot about as we're contextualizing this whole thing, right? And most of the things that we're going to talk about in part 2 really are things that we are cognizant about, right? I mean, I guess we all know where the motivation for data mining is coming from, right? I mean, there's an ever-increasing amount of information being generated. Like as we speak right now, data is being generated, right? When I'm cycling, I use Strava. Now, this is the first time I'll cycle home towards 20 hours, but I use Strava and there are logs being generated, right? There's data being generated. Since 2011, I've been logging, you know how when you log into Google, you can tell Google to keep a history of your search queries? Since 2011, I have a search history of queries that I've been issuing. It's amazing, really. I can see trends, right? What I search about at night, during the weekends and all that, you know. Same goes for YouTube, right? You know, and really this whole notion of data mining is everywhere. So I thought I'll start off with an example of YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube. I'm subscribed to 504, I'm ashamed actually, 504 channels. Now it's hard to keep up with those things here, right? But the people at Google have the manpower and the human resource and the computing resources to come up with these cool tools, right? So we know that there are recommendations that are provided to us when we access YouTube based on what we've done in the past, right? There's data mining happening in behind the scenes, right? Looking at your patterns, right? Are you watching a lot of movies to do with dogs or, you know, hip hop music and whatnot? Then the YouTube will recommend these things, right? We know that we're actually helping the YouTube train your profile when we tell it, and I do this a lot. I'll tell it if I'm not interested in something, I'll click the menu and say not interested, right? And you notice once we start discussing things to do with feature extraction, for instance, this would be a feature, for instance. If there's going to be someone working on harvesting content from Facebook using Graph API, for instance, you notice that things like they like, things like likes are what? Those would be features as well, right? These are all used in these data mining, these fancy data mining processes, right? If you look at, this is sad really, Facebook. I was looking at it when I was creating the slides. 1,000, and I should stop sending friend requests. 1,002 friends, right? Now I can't keep up with updates from David. I'm friends with David here, but I cannot keep up with updates from all the 1,002, right? So what the Facebook has done, you notice that you see things that it thinks are more important to you, right? I mean, there's obviously training happening behind the scenes, and that's what we're looking at trying to understand in this course anyway. I thought I'd mention that. But there's more, right? So it has nothing to do with just a profile. And I don't know if you've noticed graphic images and Twitter, obscene images, right? Because there's so much information, it's virtually impossible to kind of keep track of what is bad and what is good, right? And so you need to figure out ways of automatically doing this. Now, I'll be the first one to admit to say, I haven't really looked into how Facebook, for instance, has implemented, you know how if it's a graphic image, if there's blood and all that, it's covered, right? You have to explicitly uncover it to signal the fact that you want to watch this, right? That's probably automated as well, right? Don't know, maybe it's an image classification problem where you can easily identify that it's blood. You can easily identify that someone is not putting on clothes, for instance, right? It need to be an obscene image, right? Yeah. So, but there's a lot happening here. Right? Hey, we can go on and on about these examples of tools that we use on a daily basis, right? But I thought we'd immediately transition and talk about some of the cool things that people are doing in Zambia or have done in Zambia, right? Specifically students, right? I mentioned that Lydian was working on a really interesting problem of trying to automatically classify weather in Zambia, right? Rainfall patterns. It was sad to read how the Zambia Meteorological Department still goes through a manual process of predicting weather. It was very sad. I didn't know, right? But alas, Lillian came up with this approach. So she will grace us with a talk soon. I shall share the dissertation once I get permission from her. You can look into that. I don't know, our colleague from Zamtel. Oh, yes. I don't know if you know Soft. Is he? I think he's from Airtel anyway. But he did, he was trying to, the problem allegedly he was trying to solve is one of chain. You know how these telecommunications companies normally grapple with the issue of subscribers falling off, right? They'll delete them if they are inactive over a certain period of time. So his argument was that he could automatically come up with clusters of different segments of customers and be able to propose targeted campaigns to prevent chain, right? So it was working with telecom data, right? If you have access to CDRs, endless possible problems you can solve. I know this because I spent 4 years working with CDR records, right? There's a lot, and I know that these telecom companies have introduced a lot of value-added services, and in fact, things like internet access have become more mainstream now, so there's a lot of interesting things there, right? Something to think about if you're interested in carving out a research problem aligned with where you work, right? I mentioned Friday, who was, he's working towards now, it's a prototype, and in fact, he came up with a simulation of trying to automatically detect number plates as part of the broad research agenda that he had here. He also gave us a talk. This I thought was really interesting, right? These two guys are working on more or less a similar project, and I think it's a funded project. Would have to confirm with Jackson here to find out specifics of whether it's funded and whatnot. But they're trying to remember this problem of armyworm that we keep having, right? So what they're trying to do is to try and figure out a way of automatically detecting armyworms in the fields, right? I thought it was crazy because I was trying to think of the feasibility of doing something like this. I mean, how many cameras would you need if I was a commercial farmer, for instance? But we know this is an academic problem, obviously. But something else that I think makes it really interesting is the fact that they are looking at identifying a specific type of armyworm, but they're specifically for armyworm, but they're different types, right? Now, I was sitting there, one of the questions I asked them when they did their talk at ICICT was, but how are you going to, can you tell us how you're going to train this data set of yours, you know? And he made a mistake of saying, no, we will label the thing. I said, but you're not an entomologist, right? You need an expert, you know, hopefully from agric or something. I don't know if it's agric or biology department or something, right? Interesting problem. I'm really keen to see what's going to come out of this, right? Not only that, I mean, you'd probably need to get images of various parts of this so-called fall armyworm, right? So it would be nice to have them come through and give us a talk, right? Yeah, so I was just trying to throw this out there to, again, remind us that these problems are not just aligned with the tools that we use, but they are available at our workplaces, right? Telco. The problems that we could potentially solve are everyday problems, right? Agriculture apparently is meant to be one of those big things. So my shameless plug, right? For years now, I've been obsessing a lot about online visibility of scholarly output, right? Specifically in the global south, they call it. If you compare places, institutions of higher learning in places like Zambia with Europe, for instance, it's a sad story, right? There's very little content. There's very little to show for, right? I mean, if you look at the School of Education, it has 130 plus academic staff. And if you try and look for the proportion of online output that they generate, I mean, it's sad, really, right? But thankfully enough, people have already figured out what the problem is, right? We know what the problem is. And as part of our contribution to try and solve this problem, what we are wanting to do is to automatically classify content that we put in places like the institutional repository. So UNZA has an institutional repository which you can access when you go to dspace.unza.zm, right? This is where UNZA dumps all the scholarly output, right? And then it's indexed. But one of the problems we've noticed is that the content there is not properly tagged, right? So there's missing metadata elements, core. So usually when you look at a publication, let's say a PDF document, a publication, it has metadata associated with it, things like the title, who authored it, what subject it falls under, and all these things are important because they help people looking for information, a la people like you go into Google Scholar, when you search those things, you're searching in part the metadata, right? So if you don't properly tag this information, then people won't find it, right? And it's becoming increasingly difficult to find information because there's a ton of it being generated. I mean, everybody is publishing now, right? I mean, so it's crazy. So we need a way, so we are saying we can automatically generate this metadata, which is something that I'm currently obsessing a lot about, and we can automatically reclassify documents that are not properly classified here. We know this can work anyway. It's not a very serious problem. I've been involved with the University Ranking Committee for the first time in the history of the University of Zambia. I was shocked, right? The university is working towards producing the first ever research report All right, so standard practice. Most institutions of higher learning will produce research report, right? You show people to say, this was our performance when it comes to research, you know. We have these centers of excellence that have been opened up. We publish so much. You know, we have this number of researchers that publish in high impact journals like Nature, for instance, right? That has never been done. So we're working towards that. And I'm happy to say I'm involved with that. And what we're doing, right, is we are crawling for information online, right? So we're going to academic databases like Scopus, Google Scholar, right? Automatically scraping information from there and then trying to make sense out of it, right? There's a lot of data mining happening behind the scenes because we need to figure out, you know, how much of that content is being cited by whom and where and all those fancy things here. It's an oceanless plugs. Last year, I worked with some really smart students who were analyzing Moodle logs. Although they don't really have, they didn't have, it was as part of the capstone project, they didn't really have that much of a technical background. But some of the things I'm thinking of doing, crazy things we can do with logs, right? So Moodle is a learning management system platform we use at UNZA. So if we give you an example of a first year course that we're teaching, ICT 1110 for instance, can we do crazy things like try and figure out if the number of times that a student, can we answer a question, does the number of times that a student access Moodle correlate with learning outcomes? If it does, then can we build a prediction model that will be able to include that as one of the features, for instance, right? But we can do a lot of crazy things with, anyway, mining logs here, right? It would be nice if maybe we can have people do that, I guess, I don't know. Who knows, maybe we can even drill down further and try and see if access to specific features of Moodle have or correlate with learning outcomes. I know it's a wild thing, come on. It's like saying, does walking on one leg have an impact on one's health? I don't know. Yeah, it's the thing with when it comes, in fact, you discuss a lot more about these things in CSC 6000 when the issue of, you know, when you come up with a measurement instrument, you come up with user demographics. Are you male or female? Are you from Chalala or whatever? I mean, the reason you do that is you suspect that they're going to correlate with the final result, right? So I guess your task is to kind of rule out the possibility that there's any link. It might be no causal link, but is there a correlation, right? Accessing more, do you get more marks if you access more or not? I don't know. I'm co-supervising a student. I thought I would bring this up because a while back I actually analyzed my interaction logs of my Motorola, which has since died. I read a story on BBC which had said that that was about 3 or 4 years ago, I think. They had reported that the average teenager would access their phone 50 times in a day, you know, like, so you can actually, there are logs being generated here, right? So I'm working with a student who is interested in, I don't know if people have heard of the iSchool, the mobile tablet. So what iSchool has done is they've come up with 3 versions of this tablet, right? So there's the teacher version, there's the Pew edition, and the home edition. So what this student is trying to do is he's trying to figure out usage patterns, right? Now I thought it was strange, he doesn't have a technical background. I thought it was strange when he told me, no, we will use a questionnaire and all that. And I'm thinking, why? Why can't we just get the logs and see what these people are doing, right? Yeah? Data mining, right? And this would actually be interesting. It'd probably yield interesting results with regards to like different interaction patterns that exist. In fact, when you try and compare home editions with the PP edition, right? What exactly are these pupils actually accessing on that tablet, right? Can we then tell iSchool to maybe come up with alternative implementations of the apps that they have? The apps that they have are not effective, and so students are not using them, right? Anyway. And then a few months ago, some economists here, one is here at UNZA, one is at UCT, invited me to be a part of, and I'm ashamed to say that the reason why I was invited to be part of this project is they wanted me to help with data cleaning, right? It was sad. but it was sad because you see, once we describe the process of normalizing and transforming data, this is a trivial process, right? But I said, fine, I guess, but that's how you build relationships with people, right? But what they're interested in doing is they have collected, I don't know if you've heard of the Farmer Input Support Program. Yes, they have a wealth of information dating back from, is it 2002 or something? The question they're trying to ask is this thing effective? Now different people will tell, government will probably tell you it's effective, right? Because obviously they can't say it's not effective, right? But nobody has actually done an empirical study to prove that it's effective, right? So they've come up with what they're calling a novel method. They're calling it a triple effect method. Don't ask me how it works. I would have to reread the documentation they gave me. But yeah, so there's a bit of data mining here. And one of the reasons I again included this thing here is because you notice that a fundamental ingredient that one needs when undertaking a data mining project is data itself, right? And the problem we have in Zambia is we don't have data, right? And the sad story about this is one of the things because we're wanting to do some spatial analysis, right? So mapping and whatnot. But the issue we have is CSO for months now has been telling us that they are unable to provide us with lookup tables that will show us the spatial details of. So what we have here are just the codes of like the seas and the regions, right? So we want specifics of the actual coordinates of where those areas are located before we can proceed. But apparently, I was shocked, right? Apparently this is very sensitive information. And I sit there and I'm thinking, how is this sensitive information, right? And I'm bringing this up because, you know, like the rest of the world, and the rest of the world is advocating for this thing they're calling open data, right? I don't know if people have heard about this. It's sad that we're still at a stage where we try to hide information that would actually help us as a nation, right? Especially as we work towards the so-called Vision 2030, right? Now, I'm not trying to downplay this issue of sensitive information. I know there's certain information that is sensitive, but for information that is not sensitive, why can't we not make it available so that people do interesting things on it, right? I don't know. Anyway, then a while back I did. I still have these details actually. I still have this data in case people are interested in this. I did some segmentation analysis of lecture recorded screencasts, right? It was basic. I was just interested in trying to identify points of interest in a given lecture slide here. Given a 45-minute long lecture, for instance, can we try and identify points of interest, right? By the way, for those of you from National Assembly that record these things, I don't know if you use something better, but this is an open source platform, it's supposed to opencast Matterhorn. So it does automatic segmentation, and I think it also attempts to automatically index voice and whatnot. But also, something I obsess a lot about, right? A while back, when Wikipedia 1015, they said 90% of all Wikipedians are Western white males, right? 90%. When Wikipedia 1015, that was like, is it 3 years ago? There was this thing that went around in mainstream media, or Jazeera reported it, I think the BBC reported it. 90% of all Wikipedians, the people that edit Wikipedia, are Western white males. Now, for some people, this might not be like a big deal, but I obsess a lot about it. I don't like the fact that somebody else is writing my history, right? The reason why you find some sorry images on the Zambia page sometimes is like some dusty child, yes, we have dusty kids, is because somebody else is writing those things on your behalf, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm thinking there are people that are working on the area of automatic content generation, right? Text generation, right? It's a natural language processing problem here, nothing novel about it, but it's something that I'm thinking about, and it's something I obsess about because it's not just Wikipedia, right? If you look at a place like UNZA, there are very few textbooks that are authored by academics here at UNZA, right? So, the question is, can we have a starting point where we can try and provide an incentive, an easy starting point for people to write books, right? People have done this, by the way. There's a company called, is it Siavul or something in South Africa? They write textbooks for grade 5 up to grade 12, right? They mostly leverage crowdsourcing, but there are people that have experimented with automatic content generation. Bottom line is you have like a scaffold or a starting point where people can carve out content around, right? Can be done, I guess. These are all shameless plugs, things that I'm currently thinking about. But we do know that there's actually more out there, right? People from Parliament, I mentioned this the other time. This one time I saw a video that was being shared on Facebook. This is Facebook, right? And I don't know if it was Facebook or WhatsApp. A truck rammed into one of the targets or something. So it got me thinking, right? If we're getting video footage of what's happening there, what are we doing with this video footage? Are people, maybe they are, but the question I would be interested in asking is, are we able to kind of automatically figure out how much money we're making at the targets by looking at the number of vehicles passing, automatically detect them, compare it with what is being reported, right? Accountability, people, right? Can we do that? I mean, if we're not doing that, these are things, and I'll tell you one thing, these are not difficult problems. What makes them simple is because there are already known solutions for this, just implementation. That's the thing with most of the problems we are facing, right? There are problems with known solutions. All you have to do is just sit down as a group, plan, and say, let us put our heads together and solve this problem. And one more thing, this is the other problem we have, right? We work in silos. I know that we have smart people. You work with smart people, you are smart people, you're doing master's degrees, you are smart people. I've always wondered, what happened to the smart people I was in class with, right? I don't know, right? I'm telling you, we can do so much more, you know, if only we put our heads together. I obsess a lot with educational data mining. I'm interested in trying to see if we can have much higher pass rates in disadvantaged areas, remote areas, you know. Can we build prediction models and identify factors that, you know, kind of influence or affect learning outcomes? This is what I'm interested in. There's probably a pattern, right, of why is it that people in Lusaka pass a lot, right? It might not be leakage. Maybe there's things that work here, right? Can we build models for that? These are things I'm interested in. So, other things, I mean, to think about, I mean, this thing will probably come up, sentiment analysis, opinion mining as they call it. If you go to places like Zambian Watchdog that, you know, every Zambian likes here, right? I know I liked it, I have to, right? But can we, instead of scrolling through all the comments that people make here, because you can't manage, right? Unless if you have time. Can we do some sentiment analysis and do opinion mining and try and figure out if a particular post has some sort of significance, right? This is doable, right? Yeah, and I put this here because, I mean, WhatsApp has become spam, right? For large groups, and I know a lot of people use WhatsApp. I would be interested in, because most of the students that I interact with will bring up WhatsApp, right? Oh, there's a WhatsApp group, we created a WhatsApp group. If we were to identify all WhatsApp groups for first years, would we be able to detect some sort of interesting pattern or things that they are doing that might be of interest, right? I don't know, right? These are things we should be thinking about, right? And a while back, I mean, I don't know, I mean, a while back someone was telling me they had a cache of post newspapers in digital form that they had been archiving, right? Years and years of newspapers. Would we be able to mine for useful information from there and learn from the past, right? There's a lot to learn from the past. There's a lot out there. We could probably spend weeks talking about what people are doing because data is being generated, right? I don't know if people here work with the so-called Internet of Things. There's more coming here, right? But the fundamental question I would probably leave you with regards to contextualizing data mining here is, what problem should we be working on, right? I don't think that there's a right and wrong answer to this. I think that it depends on what one is obsessed with. I've always been obsessed with education, and I am happy to say that I found myself in a fortunate position where I'm almost doing what I want to do with whom and when I want to do it, right? I've always been obsessed with education, and I think I'm in the perfect place, right? It's a petri dish here. We can do so many experiments here at UNZA and in fact in Zambia, right? It's a perfect, there are people in here who perhaps would be obsessed with images, right? There are people perhaps that would be interested in working with puzzles, and I don't know if people have heard of the Square Kilometer Array project. South Africa is pumping a lot of money into this, right? They're training physicists and computer scientists. People are analyzing data being generated by this array of telescopes, right? Scattered around the world. And there's a huge array in the Karoo in South Africa. I'm told in Zambia as well, we'll probably have a few, I don't know how many, right? Yeah, but I mean, to each his own, right? There are people that are interested in this. I'm interested in what I'm interested in. Hopefully, you people have your own specific interests as well. It would be nice if we continue the conversation and try and figure out where our interests align. But I was also looking at, what is this? I don't know what happened here. But there was when I was creating these slides, right? And this is sad here, laptop. Yeah, I saw a very interesting post, and I think I know the slide that's coming next, because I was creating them, I was adding them today, the new ones. I saw a post about our minister, is it Ms. Dora Syria or something? She was saying they're wanting to solicit help from the Chinese to analyze content on TV or something. I don't know if someone picked up on it.
Yeah, I saw it.
Oh, there we go. Now I sat there and I'm thinking to myself, huh? This is a nice data mining kind of scenario I can include and have a discussion about with our colleagues at work here, right? In class. I do apologize for this. I don't know what's happening here, but hopefully I need to kill some. I need to kill some.
Soliciting. I was trying to put my mind around it to remember.
Yeah.
There's a company from China which came.
Okay.
Then I think technology to do with television.
Yes.
Like that. So now the government is asking them if they could come up with a technology to help government monitor what TV stations are broadcasting.
I feel bad because it makes us look stupid, right? It makes us look stupid. We have expertise. We have smart. Forget UNZA, right? We have smart. Is it what do they call him? Smart Zambia Institute. Yeah.
Smart Zambia.
Yeah.
It was even Smart Zambia Institute. That's what they want.
Yeah. It's sad. I mean, because the rest of the world looks at us. They read about these things, right? They'll look at us and think, are they really unable to do this as a country of 16 million, right? It's not like we're unable to do it. It's just that we are disorganized, I've always thought.
Yeah,
really disorganized, right?
There are countries of 3 million who are actually leaders in ICT. Actually, when people look at this, it's like more or less like you go to someone and you don't have an idea of what you want to buy.
Right.
They will exploit you.
Yeah.
And that is actually dangerous. An organization like, actually a country like China, you ask them to own some of your data.
Yeah.
Like Lighton is saying, TV is generating a lot of information.
Yeah.
Many different stations. They are generating a lot of content. Now imagine you give that information free people to them to analyze. What are they going to derive? What interpretation, what analysis are they going to get up?
And I assure you, I mean, I'm sure maybe some of us have already figured this out, but it's trivial stuff here. There's nothing complex here. Like analyzing, there's really nothing complex. It's not like it's something that would take months to build, right? It's not complex software. I mean, it's just, Anyway, so I saw this and I'm like, I will include this in the slides, and it happens to be in slide number 59 here. And there we go, right?
They're always exaggerated. I think that's the other problem, though.
Yeah.
They even know the solution, but they'll go for the Chinese. They know that someone is getting a cut out of it.
I know most of the time, yes.
You give them the solution, they will know that this can work, but they will ignore you because there's that interest that they have.
Yeah.
So when you hear the money is mentioning from the Chinese, then you even wonder. It's the same as the thing
Kidding
they're
us.
wondering about the Wanawasa toll gate.
All this
So there's also that aspect where they know. They
Yeah.
know that this can be done, but they won't just give you the
Don't trust that.
for someone is
Interested. And also another project, I don't know if it was recommended by Chinese, where they requested the government was didn't have control of what these mobile companies were paying as tax.
Okay.
So they wanted to monitor each call which goes on to pass through some gateway, maybe at Zika or wherever it is, and then measure the amount of revenue they've made, and then calculate some possible tax which can be, so that they compare it when they. Now that is actually a lot of data being collected there by whoever it is, and I can imagine the immense of analysis which can be done on that information.
It's sad. I mean, it's
Yeah,
it is. I mean, it's a.
if it's in other people, if it's not under your control, as and you use a foreign company, I don't know.
Sad, incidentally, the core thing you're talking about. When I was working for Airtel, I don't know if it's still the case now, but the police would actually physically walk into. I was like, I'm ashamed to say, again, I'm ashamed to say, part of my job at one time, circa 2007, 2009, when I was a foot soldier, right, at Airtel, they used to call themselves South then. It would be generating, you attend to police requests, right? A police comes with and then you extract core detailed records. And I was thinking, this can be automated. The police at this stage should have access to this information on the fly, right? Easy stuff, you know. But we're still miles away because a while back again, I escorted someone who was reporting a police case, and it was at Marshland's police post actually. This officer pulled out a huge book and they were entering, you know. So, I mean, there's endless possibilities if we were to digitize some of these things, right? Crime reporting. We don't know where most crime occurs here, which are the hot spots, right?
even the NRC system.
Yeah.
It's too manual. That's why we can't have systems that can do facial recognition for wanted people.
Yeah.
Just some.
It's very manual.
It's very manual. It's
Very manual. Just feeding a picture of someone. Within minutes, they will know that this person is
All right. So I thought we'd gloss over. So again, as a reminder that these are the objectives we're going to be working towards in this course. And just to quickly say that we have these 5 themes that we're going to be working towards. One, to understand exactly how this data mining process actually works and the importance of data processing, how we get to transform the data, normalizing it, depending on what sort of analysis you want to do. One of the themes is apparently data warehousing. Now, I feel this is misplaced, and I will suggest that this theme is misplaced. I will suggest that we probably move it towards the end, right? Once we discuss the data mining process and pre-processing, classification, associative, rule mining and clustering, and then we'll discuss data warehousing. I think it will be much better that way. So we'll shift around the themes here. Yeah, so this is essentially for us to be able to work on all these problems we've described here. We'll just go through a very simple process of understanding these actually four themes. Data warehousing is misplaced. We'll have a separate discussion about this. I have a story about data warehousing before I proceed to this part, which I'll quickly walk through. I have a story about data warehousing. On my first day of work, right, at Celtel, I remember being shocked that the tables were not in third normal form, right? It took a while for me to understand why. It's because of the sheer size of information, right? So we will understand why it's important for us to reverse the process, right? It's no longer, we need to make sure that the data is in second normal form, right? Before we start working with these data mats and whatever we want to call them, right? That was really nice. It was a nice lesson of the fundamental differences between theory and practice, I guess. Hey, so these are things associated with the different themes we're going to cover. And I just wanted to mention, right, in closing to what we've discussed so far, please, as we are discussing these things, think about potential topics you want to solve, right? Possible problem, and if I were you, I'd be writing down possible topics, right? So let's say maybe summarizing acts of law because people don't understand those things. Not everyone is able to understand those things, those PDF documents you put on the website, right? No, they don't. My mother doesn't. So the question, this thing that they were saying, you are going to find people, when you find them selling on the streets, fine if you're buying, right? People don't understand because they can't read, right? Can we summarize those things in such a way that a layman is able to understand? Simplify it, right? Interesting problems to solve, right? Endless problems. So if I were you, I'd be writing down potential problems to solve so that by the time we're done with this course, you have a set of problems that is related to data mining and warehousing. By the time you're done with distributed computing, you have a set of problems. Towards the end, all you have to do is you pick and choose to say, you know what, I want to solve this problem. Or I want to combine this and this because I think they fall within the same area, right? Also, now I obsess a lot about, I always say this, right? I did a poll in class with our first year class. I was first day of class saying, how many of us know about Vision 2030? No one did, right? I'm very passionate about this. I've always thought I'm a very small cog. This machine we call Zambia. You're a small cog, you're a small cog. But we must remember that we're working towards a bigger objective, a bigger picture. Yes, we want to feed ourselves and our families, but Zambia as a whole has goals and a vision, right? And right now, the obsession is Vision 2030. 11 years to go, gentlemen. The question is, what are we doing, right, to further this agenda? It might be a small little thing, but let's think about this. And I want us to continue having this conversation as we are having these lecture sessions, right? Especially when these speakers come, actually. All right, if I were you, again, I mentioned this, I would please make sure that I attempt all assessments, right? Every mark counts. And obviously, academic dishonesty, right? So for this part, I'll quickly walk. I promise this won't take long. I will suggest that the Python part we'll do Tuesday and Friday, so, sadly, because it's almost, if we had come early, we would have finished. But, are there any questions? Sorry. Probably not, self-explanatory. I thought I would talk about a few things to do with academic activities at UNZA, things that will be helpful. So some of these things might not necessarily be aligned with 5741, but I think it's worth mentioning here. Almost every week, there's this email address called public@unza.zm. They send through automated emails of seminars. People are doing, forget the naysayers. People always say, what are people at UNZA doing? I'll tell you this. I'll be the first one to say, anywhere you go, even at your workplaces, right? You have the hard workers, hopefully you guys. There's some people that, just going to clock in and do the bare minimum and then go back, right? There are people doing amazing things here, right? And if you want to get a sense of what people are doing, and in fact, if you're looking at working on a multidisciplinary problem, right? The only way you'll be able to identify problems is if you attend seminars that are advertised. A lot of wonderful seminars. I know you are busy people, but sometimes these things are held at times when you can sneak out of the office or take time off, maybe you're on leave, right? Attend these. I have a friend who is doing, he recently enrolled into a master's program at med school. And I was thinking, what are the people at med school doing by way of data mining, right? They're getting x-rays of people, right? The cancer hospital, what are they doing with those things, right? Potential data that we could use to do interesting things, right? The only way you'll be able to think about all those potential problems is if you attend these seminars. Because you're not a domain expert, right? And this issue of domain experts will actually come up. Yeah.
Is there a way for these seminars to be broadcast online or?
You know, I've been, by the way,
on YouTube and also
well,
yeah.
Thank you for asking that. I've been thinking of doing that. In my classes, some of my classes, I've only managed screencasts, right? They're useful for the first years, actually. They like the screencasts. But I've been thinking, it's possible, David, but the problem is lecture recording infrastructure would probably have to, especially for, you have a very important point here, for prominent talks actually. Maybe we could, yeah, something worth looking into. I will personally take it up and find out. I have a sneaking suspicion certain schools, like med school, might have equipment for that. I know for things that are held in the Senate chamber, for instance, I think MASCOM will probably take equipment there and do fancy things or something. But that's something we should do. I mean, most of these institutions of higher learning will have like YouTube channels where they record seminars. We should be doing that, yeah. Yeah, but for us, I plan to actually. I have some makeshift equipment. It won't be useful. It will be useful for those of you that will be busy, that won't be able to attend the seminars. But other than that, I don't know. I'm thinking of every time we have an invited person, we get some video footage of them and then share it somewhere. But please make time. And also, these are exams, right? Oral exams. Attend them, especially those that are aligned with what you're doing. Or if you have an interest in something. Like the other time, I saw something from MASCOM, and they were in part looking at, ICTs in broadcasting. And I have an interest in that because this issue of recording, actually, I've been thinking a lot about using MOOCs when it comes to distance learning. UNZA is not doing that, right? So I thought that the talk would be a nice way of trying to get a sense of which people in mass communication actually do these things. And I attend these things, right? When I have time, I just go there and I sit in there and I learn something new. And in fact, I always learn something new. Always, right? Especially when you attend these talks in other fields, because their approach to research is different, right? So you'll find that the emphasis here, for instance, is maybe more qualitative, right? I come from a quantitative background. I see numbers everywhere, right? I quantify things. I won't come to you and say, David, tell me how your day was, and I expect you to tell me how you felt. For me, what makes sense is I tell you how was your day, compute and tell me. I went for work, and between this time I did ABCD, I worked on this. For me, that makes more sense, right? Quantitative, qualitative, right? But it's fine. Listening to someone talk about qualitative studies gives me ideas of what I could potentially do to complement my quantitative strength, right? So please attend these things when you can, especially the exams. Your time is coming whether you like it or not. So you want to attend so that you see the questions that are asked, the problems that the candidates are making, right? It's usually the same problems, and I always tell the organizers, the issue is we don't normally have new students attending these events so that they see the problems that these other candidates are making. Like almost all the 5 candidates didn't didn't finish their presentations during the CS oral exams, right? They were given 10 minutes, they didn't rehearse, right? You find, oh, time is up and someone is halfway through, right? All right, and on events, please, I don't know if you're aware of this, twice annually, DRGS organizes what they call, there's usually what they call is it a postgraduate seminar week? Yeah, postgraduate seminar week. So you have these senior, we call them senior students, so people that are in second, third year, right? They have poster presentations, right? Usually at DRGS offices. They present as well, right? There are always people from CS. Go there, attend, because your time is coming. It's a requirement, you have to attend those things, right? You'll be expected to attend. So you want to go, the next one is coming up in June, right? I know maybe you'll be busy studying or something, but just maybe spend, just go and attend 1 or 2 presentations and see the posters so that you see what's going on, right? And then there's also the October one. There are usually 2 sessions held. Please do that. All right, so the next part was supposed to be Python, but I think actually it would only be fair if we do it with the other group. I'm sure they would be saying, no, but we are not supposed to be there on Friday. Why are we being subjected to? And rightfully so. So I don't know if there are any questions, but this is going to be interesting. Yeah.
So now those notifications of events, they say they'll be sent to UNZA.
The UNZA mail, student number.
Email.
Yes, I think so.
How do we subscribe?
By default, everyone has a student at UNZA. Student number at student.unza.zm. And now, maybe this is not a big deal for people like you, but I always tell the first year students, working people, you have access to unlimited storage. UNZA signed an MOU with Google, right? So by virtue of you using that UNZA account, you have access to unlimited G drive space. You have, this is one of the reasons why we have this UNZA branded mailing list, yeah? Because of the MOU, yeah.
You said it's student?
Student number at.
You made my student
yeah, your student number, and then at student.unza.zm.
So where am I logging in? Where is the platform?
So the way you normally log in using Google. So just open up Google and then just log in.
From Google?
Yeah. They've signed an MOU. Google manages, it's a managed service.
And what would be my password?
Your password by default is your student number actually.
Student what?
So your student number and then at student.unza.zm.
In Gmail.
So if your student number is 2021 blah blah blah, so it'll be 2021 blah 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 at student.unza.zm. Now it's a good thing for us because we have 2 emails now. We have the UNZA email and the CS emails. Do we have CS emails? Yeah, right?
We don't have any.
No, but this is, how are you going to implement some of the things? The assignments then? I thought you are given web spaces.
I saw them on CS.
Yeah.
It's
It's standard practice. You're supposed to have those things.
At unza.zm.
Yeah.
No, at student.unza.
So I'll give you an example of, let me see if I can fish out.
Couldn't find the account. That's Google.
If it hasn't.
Gmail. That's Gmail, sorry.
It hasn't. He's saying he couldn't find the account. Then maybe we should push for, because actually you can't when we activate Moodle uses this account by default.
Oh.
Yeah, there's probably an issue. I can help follow up with CICT. I'll put it as a to-do list. I'll have an answer for you on Tuesday and Friday.
So all those events will be published there.
Yeah, so they broadcast a lot of things, and prepare yourselves for unsolicited emails, people conducting studies and whatnot.
Sorry.
But these are broadcasted there as well. But meantime, I will be forwarding emails to that mailing list, things that I think are useful. I forgot to email something. I hope I won't. I don't know if people have heard of what they call a deep learning Indaba. They sponsor students, masters and PhD students. Please, if you have an interest, an inclination, deep learning, these are events you should attend. They'll sponsor your trip, right? I think it's going to happen in Kenya or something. this time around. Deep learning, just Google up deep learning in Indaba 2019. I will also share, let me just take note of this. I'll also share the mail, forward it, and share the link. All right, so I will see you
Friday, yeah.
yes, Friday and Tuesday.
Then the following week, we shall be together with the recording.
Yes, and I think I'm planning to, we are planning to have, I was thinking have the industry talk, because he's the best person to talk about data processing and normalization. And then afterwards we can invite maybe Francis or Lillian. Maybe start with Lillian before we start looking at image processing. Okay, thank you so much. If there are no questions, and I will share the slides, of course.
Thank you.
It's signing, is it?
Have you written on the attendance thing? No? Those are marks.
I wonder if someone is going to mind this, right? Who reads this?
I think they are part of attendance.
Should be
It's
electronic
like
as
Dr.
well.
Pino was saying that
Computer science department.
Dr. Pino was saying that there are certain number of classes
why
one
don't
has
they
to attend for them to be
automate them?
considered for exams
Yeah.
and everything.
It's an issue of counting now, right?
Light on.
I think I agree with what Doc is saying, because that would be an issue of counting now.
How many lectures did this one attend?
What's the date? The 24th, eh? 24th.
Today is Hey, McDonald's not done.
Wow.
22nd.
And by the way, I do hope we will persevere. It won't be. I have attempted the work school thing. I know it's not easy to come from work but sometimes push yourself. You know, there are times when you're tired and you feel like I won't get anything from this class, but there's always something to get. You know, the discussions especially. So just push yourself, drag. Maybe we can start bringing coffee so that people wake up.
I think we'll be bringing coffee.
What operating system are you using?
I use, I like spreading the weight. I use Kubuntu religiously. Kubuntu.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a KDE desktop. Anyway. So Ubuntu, but KDE desktop. It's called Kubuntu though.
Ubuntu.
Yeah.
Oh, but
It looks nice.
It's also Ubuntu.
Yeah, it's also Ubuntu. I hope it's not locked here. Yeah, usually it's locked.
Yeah. Man. Work and this stuff.
Yeah. I think they did my exercise a lot.
Yeah, I went for gym.
Yeah. Let me check this publication there. All the ones they were mentioning, the drawings and the like.
Yeah.
Now, compare and contrast. Leave where one is in. I guess these are all where it's better. If you notice the point of some point consistency. Yeah, it's easy actually. You can make Latin in one day. It comes with a number of tools. Yeah. See you guys. Enjoy. Thanks.